What's up, grinders? As mentioned in previous videos, I'm now in China to practice my language skills, and I am in the city called Chongqing. This city is famous for using a lot of hot food, which I found out the hard way last night, and my butt has been burning all night. Anyway, let's talk about something different. Okay, so I'm going to break this video down into two parts because they're both related, but they're also quite separate in one way. So the first part is actually going to be the materials that you use, and you should be avoiding language learning materials as soon as you can. And the second part is actually sentence mining. So why am I saying you should be you should be avoiding language learning materials as fast as possible? And I'll give a great example specifically for Chinese because that's the language I'm primarily focused on at the moment. Now, if you guys watched that previous video where there was that person who was learning Chinese and he was talking about his difficulties in understanding the language, one thing I noticed right away, but I didn't actually express in that video, but it popped off in the comments section later on, was the fact that his language that he was using was very HSK-ish. Now, for those who don't know, HSK is a testing system that exists for the Chinese language. It's got various levels. It goes 1 to 6 traditionally, and now there's more levels on top. But basically, the language that you learn in that, it's very standardized, it's very bookish, it's not the type of language that people actually use on the street every day. Yes, these words are used, people do use them, but the vast majority of the words and the structures that it teaches, it's not how like a native speaker would speak. So if you're just following the HSK system, you're going to sound like a TV presenter at the end of it. You're going to have like really formalized speech and stuff like that, but you're not going to sound like someone who's on the street. Now, obviously, reaching native levels almost impossible for the vast majority of people. We just want to get to fluent. But what we do want to get to is being able to actually understand real life content as fast as possible. And what happens with all the things specifically for Chinese, all the learning materials, is they're all built around the HSK system and getting you through these tests and saying you're at level 1, you're at level 2, 3, 4, etc., etc. But this is not the language that people actually use in their day-to-day lives. So for example, when I do my studies, I record the words that I'm actually learning and I pull the words out of actual vlogs and stuff like that. And I'd say over 50% of these words that I'm learning in the most basic of shows do not appear anywhere at any level at HSK. I'm talking right up to HSK 6. If you go watch a kids show in Chinese and you start writing down all the words from it, I would say over half the words that you encounter do not appear anywhere within the HSK system, and this is a kids show. And it's the same with pretty much every level of Chinese content you watch. So instead, what should you do? Well, as soon as you've got the most basic fundamentals down, pronunciation and stuff like that, you should try sentence mining. And I'll go into more detail for what that specifically is in a second. But basically what you do is you start with the kids shows, and as soon as you can get past the kids shows, you move on to things like vlogs, simple vlogs, and then gaming videos. Funnily enough, gaming videos usually use repetitive, simple vocab, but it's also at a fast speed, so you can actually listen to more fluent speed. And then move on to podcasts, and then finally onto movies and stuff like that. So sentence mining, for those who don't know, that's simply where you watch a show, you find a complete sentence within that show that you think, hey, you know what, this is a structure that I might want to use in my real life. So you take that sentence out of the show, you make an audio recording of it, or you clip the audio from the show, it doesn't matter how you do it, and you can listen to that and you can practice that. So what you're doing there is you're actually practicing the speech patterns and templates of real speakers as opposed to this bookish language that's been standardized by various different academies. It's gone through all these like steps to make sure, it doesn't, offend anyone, or it doesn't relate to any specific group. It's very like standardized across the board. But we don't want that. We want to start listening to real life content as soon as possible, which means we should be sentence mining, grabbing these sentences out of real shows, out of real content, and practicing these because this is how people talk. And to make this even a more faster process for you, obviously I'm talking relatively here because like learning a language is a very slow process, but if you want to get to understanding native level content faster, what you should do is narrow down the type of content you want to get to as fast as possible. So for me, it might be gaming FPS shooters and stuff like that. So I'm only going to watch those, and I'm only going to sentence mine from them because they're going to use the same vocab and the same structures over and over and over, and you get to hear it over and over and over, and then you can take those, you can sentence mine them, you can practice them, and because it's such a very narrow niche, you're going to hear the same things over and over, which means you can get to that native level understanding just for that one very narrow area of the language. But at least you can enjoy something, so you can move on with your your life in a sense. And then once you get good at that very narrow area, you can move to like something that's a bit more parallel. So from an FPS, you could move over to, I don't know, an RPG. That's probably a bit insane, an RPG, because they usually got like lots of random vocab for like all sorts of weapons and stuff like that. But you get the idea. You pick something that's parallel, you've already learnt a bit from this area, and then you can jump across, and then you keep expanding. And what you're doing is you're chopping up the language and you're moving slowly out from this area. So for example, my understanding of gaming videos is super high. My understanding of vlogs is like, yeah, it's okay. But then when it comes to like politics, I understand nothing because it's not an area that I've worked on. Anyway, basically that's all I wanted to cover off. Just try avoid the learning materials as fast as possible. Move on to real content, sentence mine as quick as you can. And I'll see you all in the next video. And if you're not there, well, I will find you no matter where you are in the world, and I will force you to eat all those learning materials you've wasted valuable time on.